Ready to go!
You're listening to By Land and by Sea, powered by the Maritime Professor. Season 5 is here, and we are kicking things off with a big one, a new look, new ways to connect, and a special guest. We have Acting Maritime Administrator Sang Yi on today. Welcome back to By Land and by Sea. We are in Season 5. We're so happy to have you here. Again, By Land and by Sea, an attorney breaking down the week in supply chain, presented by the Maritime Professor. I'm Lauren Began, former FMC International Affairs attorney and founder of the Maritime Professor and Squall Strategies. By Land and by Sea is your go-to resource for navigating the regulatory side of global ocean shipping. And me? Well, I'm your favorite maritime attorney. I'm here to walk you through both ocean transport and surface transport topics in the wild world of supply chain. As always, the guidance here is general and for educational purposes only. It should not be construed to be legal advice, and there's no attorney-client privilege created by this video or this podcast. If you need an attorney, contact an attorney. This is plain language maritime, created so that anybody, not just lawyers or industry insiders, can understand what's happening in the world of shipping. Let's dive into this week's episode because, as you know, ocean shipping moves the world. All right, as we start this new season, I wanted to kind of take it back to my roots a little bit here. Why did I start the Maritime Professor? How did this all begin? So let me share a quick story about that. It didn't begin with a business plan. It actually started more of a question. I was on Twitter at the time, I think X now. A few truckers were following me. I had done some engagements with Freight Waves, which was fantastic. And one of those truckers had asked me to explain some ocean shipping concepts. They reached out saying they didn't need me as an attorney through Squall Strategies. They just wanted somebody to break it down, plain language answers. Like, what does this mean? And from that moment on, it just occurred to me we needed a venue for plain language conversations in maritime. And that's where the Maritime Professor was born, an education platform designed to make maritime and supply chain knowledge practical, accessible, and easy to understand. And from our roots, we're evolving again. You see it in our Season 5 launch. If you follow me on LinkedIn, we have a new logo, a new intro video, new focus on bringing you plain language breakdowns of the hottest topics in ocean shipping. But beyond that, we're adding to our course catalog again, based on feedback from you, the listeners. And speaking of listeners, we are so excited to welcome sponsors and partners this season. We've already rolled out a few, and there's a few more in the works. Go check out the website, themaritimeprofessor.com/podcast. A huge thank you to the National Association of Waterfront Employees, NAWI, the voice of the U.S. Marine Terminal Operators and stevedoring industry in Washington, D.C., representing employers who keep cargo moving at America's ports. A thank you to Manifest Vegas, a premier future of supply chain and logistics summit held every year in Las Vegas. This year, February 9th through 11th, 2026, at the Venetian. Also, thank you to Nessie Consulting, a maritime innovation firm that helps companies bring high-tech solutions into the blue economy, from commercial shipping to maritime defense. And also, finally, a thank you to Squall Strategies. That's my law firm, my strategic advisory firm, where I help clients navigate U.S. ocean shipping regulations, engage with the FMC, and align business strategy with policy developments. This support helps us bring insightful content to you every week, and we are so thrilled to be building these partnerships as we continue into Season 5. This season, we're also rolling out Just-in-Time Learning. It's our newest offering built for fast-moving supply chain professionals. These are meant to be short, plain language sessions, as you love, 30 minutes or less, that deliver exactly what you need right when you need it. They're going to be rolling out in 2 formats, so watch for this. We're going to have live webinars where you can join me in real time. The first one kicks off next week, the FMC versus MARAD. It's our first live webinar. It's September 18th at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. FMC versus MARAD being a compare and contrast. What do they each do? But we're also going to have content rolling out on-demand courses that you can take anytime at your convenience. And of course, some things don't change. The By Land and by Sea podcast remains the core of what we do here at the Maritime Professor, alongside our corporate trainings, our Port and Harbor Commission briefings, and onboarding programs for industry and professionals. All of this change helps us better focus on the continued promise, and that is maritime regulations and supply chain policy doesn't have to be complicated. They can be explained in plain language so that anybody, not just lawyers or insiders, can understand and use them. That's the true vision of the Maritime Professor, and we're so happy you're here with us. Well, let's dive in. A lot has happened since we last spoke and we wrapped season 4. And before we get into our guest, I wanted to cover a few things. One in particular, I want you to keep your eye on this. We're probably going to be doing an episode on this, but that is the USTR Section 301 port fees. They are set to begin October 14th. I'm already seeing news start to bubble up about it, but you need to be watching this. So, Section 301 USTR port fees, what is it? A quick briefer. So starting October 14th, like I said, these are going to be new port fees under the Section 301 authority of USTR, the United States Trade Rep, that they're going to be applying to vessels that have a connection to China. And I say a connection, we'll get into that in a minute. But the fees are based on net tonnage and are designed to reduce the reliance on Chinese-built and Chinese-operated ships. They're trying to impact behavior, purchasing decisions on whether to buy Chinese-built or not based on these fees and the deference of vessels that have a Chinese connection to them to the United States market. And within these vessel routes of ocean carriers, prioritizing the U.S. market with non-Chinese built vessels. So what exactly is going on here, right? We have Chinese-built vessels that are being targeted, Chinese-operated vessels that also have fees on them, and then we have a third category of non-China built and non-China operated. So the more China presence, roughly speaking, the more China presence a vessel has, the higher the fee, right? So built in China, operated by China, that's the highest fee you're going to find. Built in China but not operated by China, or operated by China but not built in China, that's going to be a mid-level fee. Neither built nor operated in China, that's going to be your lowest fee or maybe even exempted from the fees. So the key exceptions here that I think that you should also note, container ships under 4,000 TEUs, exempted from this. U.S. flags or U.S.-owned vessels with majority U.S. ownership, also exempted. Short sea shipping, so voyages about 2,000 nautical miles, like trade to the Caribbean or Canada, also exempted. So this is not legal advice. This is just educational discussion, and I want you to take a deeper look. Why does this matter? You may or may not see importers, or you may or may not, if you're an importer, see these fees pass through in carrier invoices. Already we're seeing messaging saying that we're not going to see some surcharges. I believe CMA CGM just said that they weren't going to be issuing a general surcharge on this, but this could be a fee that gets passed to the carrier, not necessarily their fault, right? They bought these vessels a few years ago, 20 years ago. So this is supposed to be changing behavior going forward. So all that to say, we'll see how the surcharges happen, if they happen, if the charge itself gets passed through. But what I want you to do is get informed. I want you to go check out in some of those shipping information documents, you can find the vessel name, the actual vessel name. In there, check out that vessel name. Google search that vessel name. See where that vessel was built. The more you know, the better prepared you can be for when we do likely, who knows how it'll actually be applied, but likely get into discussions and potentially disputes on the pass-through of some charges. So all I'm saying here is there are going to be fees assessed based on the kind of level of Chinese built or operated the vessel is itself. Go check out those routes. Go check out what vessels that your cargo is moving on those routes. Check out what vessel your cargo specifically when it came in or going out, but it's really a coming in thing. What vessel name it was on, and just Google it. Find out where that vessel was built. I want you to stay informed. All right, Season 5, premier guest. We have Acting Maritime Administrator Sang Yi. He's only been in this role since June, but I've already been impressed with how much messaging has been coming out of MARAD. Acting Administrator Yi is making it a point to get out there. He's listening, he's learning, he's taking not only to the usual players, but also new voices in the industry. I was actually able to chat with Sang at the State of Maritime christening, one of the brand new NSMV vessels. The conversation itself was rich in content, but due to the challenging audio environment at the event, Unfortunately, the recording wasn't quite good enough for a podcast. I'm going to be showing little snippets. If you're watching on the video, you can see there it is. We had the conversation. It was beautiful. The vessel was in the background. Oh, I'm still learning, aren't I? But here we go. We have a re-record. He was so generous to be able to sit down. We were actually able to go into a little deeper of a discussion. But before we get into that conversation, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, as I always do. There's a little bit of alphabet soup that I want to decode. So we have 5 of the 6 state maritime academies are getting brand new training ships. They've already received a few, but instead of making these only for the academies as they were being built, these ships are being purposely built for multiple missions. So when I say NSMV, or when you hear that acronym, it stands for the National Security Multi-Mission Vessel. And that's what it is. It's a vessel built for multiple missions, also relating to national security. So NSMV, National Security Multi-Mission Vessel. When you hear it, yes, they'll train cadets, but they're also designed to step in during disasters, moving cargo, housing first responders, even serving as floating hospitals. Multi-mission is the whole point here. So when we say NSMV, that's what we mean. It's a vessel that can do more than one thing. It was built to do so. Okay, NSMV. We also often hear VCM right after when we're talking about NSMV. So NSMV, National Security Multi-Mission Vessel, VCM, Vessel Construction Manager. It's basically a new way of handling shipbuilding at MARAD, and it really is a novel idea. Instead of the government managing the builds, MARAD bid it out and brought on a private company, in this case Tote Services, to manage the project. So Tote is the Vessel Construction Manager, VCM. So as the name suggests, they manage the construction of the vessel. VCM, Vessel Construction Manager. They oversee the actual construction happening at the Hanwha Philly shipyard of these NSMV vessels, these National Security Multi-Mission Vessels in Philadelphia. And now you know NSMV, VCM, the alphabet soup, it's just multi-purpose vessels being overseen in a public-private partnership, right? So why does this matter? Why is this model important? Because it's actually working. These ships are being delivered on time and on budget. Vessels. And beyond that, keeping this work at Hanwha Philly Shipyard sustains U.S. shipbuilding capacity and U.S. shipyard jobs, both critical if we want to maintain and strengthen maritime power here in the U.S. So please enjoy my conversation with Sang as we've been getting to know him better. I've come to find him to be very personable and what feels like a real desire to get things done. He's bringing innovation steeped in tradition, making sure to keep both sides in view, new ideas for the future while respecting the rich history of U.S. maritime. So with that context in mind, let's jump into my conversation with Acting Maritime Administrator Sang Yi. Today we have a very special guest, our first guest of the new season, Acting Maritime Administrator Sang Yi. Acting Administrator Yi was appointed to this role in June, less than 3 months ago, and he's been hitting the ground running, bringing with him a deep mix of maritime, national security, and policy expertise. Administrator Yi is a graduate of the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, where he earned his 3rd May Unlimited Tonnage license. He serves as a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy Reserve, of which he's been a part since 2003. He holds a JD from the George Washington University School of Law and a master's in national security and strategic studies from the Naval War College. Before MARAD, Acting Administrator Yi spent many years on the Hill in the House of Representatives as a senior-level staffer, recently as Director of Investigations on the House Committee on Homeland Security, but also investigative and policy roles in committees of both national security, natural resources, and oversight and government reform. In 2018, he was even elected as councilman of Fairfax, Virginia. How cool. And early in his career, impressively I might add, he served as a maritime analyst and rose to executive officer of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Now that's a career blending maritime, defense, intelligence, and policymaking, and now he's at the helm of MARAD at a pivotal moment for American shipbuilding. So without further ado, let's welcome Acting Maritime Administrator Sang Yi to the By Land and By Sea podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning, Lauren. Thank you for having me.
You know, and I believe this is your first podcast ever. Is that right? Certainly in the maritime space.
It is. This would be my first podcast as the acting administrator here, and it's a pleasure to see you again. Though I know we've spoken before, but I think it's important that people kind of hear what's going on at MARAD. So glad for the
That's right.
opportunity.
That's right. Well, welcome to the world of podcasting. We're so happy to have you here, and you've been doing such a great job getting the message out. So let's jump right in. First, thank you for the generous invitation to attend the christening of the state of Maine. It was an incredible day. I have to say, our friend of the show, Sal Mercogliano, also expressed his appreciation for the invite. He spoke about it in his recap video of the day, but he was so sad to miss it. But that day really felt like a milestone. You could feel the energy permeating throughout the whole environment. We already had NSMV ships under construction, and 2 had already actually been delivered, but this was the first one out of the Hanwha Philly shipyard having Hanwha involved. To see that yard grow from, I think what I've heard was it was around 60 employees to over 1,800 is such a success story. And with 2 more NSMV vessels on the way, it feels like the real momentum is building. So what does this mean for the industry? What's the significance here, and how do we replicate this kind of success? With fewer than 60 change orders, which is unheard of, let's talk a little bit about the vessel construction manager model too, and why is it proving to work so well?
Well, first of all, I always keep telling people in this job that we have 4 focus areas at MARAD. And since I've been here, I've been focusing on people and ships, cargo, and ports. And in each of those areas, I think that the NSMV program really encapsulates that well. When we talk about people, we talk about mariner workforce development and growing our mariner workforce, licensed, and even the tangential industries associated with shipbuilding. The maritime industry is a rather large and vast industry, and I think we haven't really shared that information as an industry enough publicly. But I think when you talk about the NSMV, like, what a great promise of a future where we're training young people to become licensed mariners and join this industry. And also in the meanwhile, having this robust shipbuilding agenda benefiting from this program as well. And man, I can't be more enthusiastic about the vessel construction management program. I think my time in this job so far, going to the Hill, talking to policymakers, tons of people are so excited about the VCM model. They think it's an incredible model, and you should be proud of it. We've saved hundreds of millions of dollars in years of timeline because of it, and I think it's the way of the future. We've proven that it could work. Hopefully, we have another shot at proving it that it will continue to work. And my main thing is that as I said before at the christening, which was quite an event. That it really marks a new era in maritime. I know she was the 3rd to be christened, but at the same rate, like you mentioned, Philly Hanwha, the first time I visited them, they did tell me about an instance where you would go into a warehouse and there was literally one person with a broom just sweeping the floor. And they said, we think they may have just placed that person to show that there was some activity. But you go there now, it is a lively, hopping place full of jobs, full of apprentices, learning, people in the industry growing and training. This is how you build, and this is how you rebuild a maritime industry.
That's right. It really was so full of life. And this VCM model, right? So it's vessel construction manager model. And this is where MARAD, it was a really novel idea to pair with a private operator with shipbuilding experience to oversee the build. In this situation, it was Tote Services. Tote managed the contract, worked directly with Philly Shipyard, and kept things on schedule and within budget, like you said. It's been called really the best practice example of how government and private industry can work together to actually deliver those results. And so this NSMV vessel is a really unique model too. The National Security Multi-Mission Vessel, a fleet of these 5 new training ships being built. It really is such a fantastic thing to see that we will have these NSMV vessels coming online. And let's talk a little bit about the value of these NSMV vessels, right? It's something that the cadets are going to be able to train on. What does having a purpose-built vessel mean compared to the old training ships that they had relied on for years?
Well, these NSMV vessels, as the name suggests, National Security Multi-Mission Vessels, they will also be used for emergency readiness and preparedness and response, which is an incredible thing. I actually think I don't know if you've gotten a chance to go on board on one of them, but they have a ro-ro aspect to it. They have some other cargo aspects to it. it is and the dual decks for the cadets to be able to train on. I mean, this is cutting edge stuff. I think a lot of the equipment on there is pretty high end. It's a wonderful opportunity. I was when we were at this christening there, I met a bunch of the cadets there too from Maine Maritime, and I thought about how excited they were to have this new training equipment coming to their school soon. And then I thought about how many other young people will see this and think, wow, I want to go to a school where I can train on a vessel like that. Or maybe they won't realize it's a vessel. They'll say, I want to go beyond that. I want to be a part of that. And I think that's another incredible thing that the NSMD program is bringing to us. It's not just the training. It's not just the emergency readiness or response, but it's also a great recruitment tool. And when we talk about, again, people, ships, cargo, and ports, you can build all the ships you want. If you don't have the cargo for it, you're not going to have a demand for the ships. But let's say you do have the ships and the cargo, you still need the manpower to man these ships. And right now, the way that we have our trajectory going for our hopes and dreams and ambitions, we will not have enough mariners. We need to get to the work of training more. And frankly, even right now, you see a lot of companies where people are working a lot more than they want to because they just don't have enough mariners to rotate in and out. That's not good. That's not a good thing for our workforce. It's another reason why I work a lot and discuss a lot with labor because I mean they're partners here, and that's kind of my overall thing too. Is I just want to make sure that the industry and those out there, they know that MARAD's going to be a partner now. We're not here to bear down on them. By law, we're literally mandated to help foster, develop, and promote the maritime industry of the United States, and that's what we're here for. And we're going to partner with everybody we can.
That's right. And that's so important to hear, too. And, you were a young cadet at one point, too. You've been in their shoes, a Kings Pointer. And for our listeners, the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, run by MARAD, is commonly known as just that, Kings Point, right, the town where it's located. Through that experience, you actually went to sea enough to get your third May unlimited tonnage merchant marine license, which is fantastic to see an actually licensed mariner in this role. And you're also a Navy reservist, so you understand better than most, I'd say, the intersection of both defense and commercial interests. And that's the part that is so important to me, and I think in many others in the industry, to see somebody who understands the commercial shipping side in your role and not just the military defense shipping interest. It's an important balance because MARAD finds itself in the same position simply by the jurisdictional authority, balancing commercial interests with military readiness like the ready reserve fleets. So in recognizing that you've kind of lived that balance, talk to me a little bit more about your time at sea, both as a cadet and perhaps in your Navy experience, taking you out to sea if it did.
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, there's no doubt that our merchant marine and their national security are inextricably linked. I mean, anybody who reads anything about history will understand that. But I do like to differentiate for a lot of policymakers too that there's a big difference between commercial shipbuilding and Navy shipbuilding. Sometimes that conversation or sometimes those ideas get lost in the conversation. I think many times people think, well, we're building great ships. We're building all these Navy ships, and they don't think about the container ships. They don't think about the tankers. They don't think about the ro-ros. They don't think about the breakbulk ships, or even the specialty ships or barges, right? And so part of my job, I feel as though to go and help educate and inform not just the public, but policymakers in Washington, what those differences are. And these are very pivotal and key differences. And as someone who was a licensed mariner and also a Navy reservist, I understand the intersection between both. And in fact, my very first job, or I guess my internship, was at the Maritime Administration when I was a midshipman at Kings Point.
Cool.
I always thought I wanted to go to law school, so I asked them if I could do an internship at a law firm, and they said no, that you're gonna have to go to a shipping company or something like that, or some maritime industry. And I knew about MARAD since I was an 18-year-old because it's been part of my life in one way or another. And I asked if I could go there and be an intern in the office of the chief counsel. So that was my very first internship, and it's pretty incredible that almost a quarter century later I'm back here. But I've also, as a Navy reservist, been TACAD certified. So I've been on turbo activation on one of our ready reserve fleet ships and taken one out as the TACAD advisor officer, and got to see up close a lot of the issues at hand. We have a pretty aging fleet, as everyone is pretty well aware. That recapitalization of the fleet, I think, is imperative. But the whole model of how we do the NDRF is also something that we need to put close scrutiny on. We want ships to be active. We want them to be effective and purposeful for the taxpayer. And when we say that we want these ships to be ready for the Navy when they need them, some of these ships, and we're talking 50, 60-year-old vessels, they're well past their lifespan. And the engineers and the skeleton crews who are on there operating and maintaining them, they do a great job, but there's only so much you can do with a vessel that's that age sometimes. So that has to be a broader conversation. That is something that is talked about in Washington, but we need to make sure we get that right. Because again, everything with maritime, you asked about my time as a cadet. One of the things I'll always remember, I was on the bridge as a deck cadet, and I remember we were going in and out of a pilot's area, and the way that the pilot was, commanding the ship, I thought, this is so slow. When my very first ship, I remember being on the bridge, I'm like, everything moves so slow on the ship. But the funny thing is like, it's actually not moving that slow. And if you don't make those movements and maneuvers correctly right now, you're pretty much, it's fait accompli for you in a bad way. So one thing I kind of always remember about that experience was in the maritime world, especially, probably true for life. You make your decisions now, and you suffer the consequences, good or bad, later. And this industry, I think we're at this pivotal moment. If we don't take advantage of it right now, we will suffer even harder later. We already are suffering, and these are things of impacts from not just one person, but policy decisions, geopolitical reasons, economic reasons, all these factors. All of these things happened decades and decades ago. And frankly, when I think back to my time as a midshipman and now, a quarter century later, some of these conversations, they're not unfamiliar to me because I've heard them since I was 18. The same people are talking about the same things with the same solutions. We're getting the same results. So I think that's what's so amazing about what President Trump has done with his executive order. I think that's what's so amazing about this vigor that Secretary Duffy has brought to the maritime industry. We're changing things. We're going to be innovative. We're going to do things differently here. And that's part of my goal too, as my time here at the Maritime Administration is talk to different people, find out some different ideas. Let's go thinking outside the box here too. I know the maritime industry is steeped in tradition and culture, and we want to be respectful of that. As a fellow mariner, like, I get it, but at the same rate, like, we need to move into the future, and we're losing to China, we're losing the other countries. We don't want to do that. That's a terrible way to go. If we don't fix that now, if we don't course correct right now, my children, my grandchildren, they're going to suffer the consequences, and we don't want that. So.
That's right. And I think you're so right in saying that these are some of the same conversations that have been happening for decades now. And that's why the maritime industry, I think we all felt it this spring when there was so much inertia, so much momentum, so much excitement for what comes next. That I think that's a fantastic view of we should respect the traditions, but also let's move it all forward. And I think everybody continues to be on board. And I think that christening symbolized kind of, all right, we're getting to work, we're moving, let's start celebrating, and let's start moving the ball forward. So it's you've talked about the 4 pillars: people, ships, cargo, and ports, being how we're going to lead and how we're going to win. And certainly the people and the ships pillars are gaining momentum, especially with this NSMV vessel and workforce training that it brings. But a lot of my listeners are shippers, and so some of the most immediate touch points for them are the cargo and the ports. So how does MARAD keep those pillars moving forward as well?
Absolutely. I think that's such a pivotal part. We keep talking about building ships. If there's no demand for them, what are we building them for? So I think, again, shippers have not been traditionally as incorporated into this conversation as they should be. And it's something that I really want to change. I think the shippers, being the customers, they are the demand. There's a lot of different policy ideas out there, including incentivizing shippers to use U.S. flag. I think that's wonderful. I mean, it's not an innovative approach. It's just we haven't really done it. We do it with government cargo. We have some here and there, but there's a lot of carrots that we can use and not just sticks. And I'm hoping to see a lot of that. But in my conversation so far with some shippers, uh, I think there's a willing appetite to be part of the solution here. I actually, this is incredible because you think that this has to do a lot with dollars or cents because they're businesses. But there's also a lot of patriotism involved here, and to appeal to their patriotism about why this industry is so important and why our intermodal transportation system is part of our not just economic strength but national security, and people understanding that these shippers, I think that's a fabulous thing. I think that's incredible to harness and use that to move forward. So um, that's definitely on the cargo end. Right now, I know like Hanwha Philly announced that they were going to build 10 MR tankers, Jones Act tankers at that, right? And some people say, well, where's the cargo, right? We need to figure that out because I love the fact that there's this initiative to build ships and this excitement. But if we don't have the same level of enthusiasm for understanding how to provide the cargo and create that demand, we're cruising for a cruising. So, but that, and to me also, that's the same part you mentioned, my four pillars, I guess, is the ports. Right now, our ports, they're aging. Some of these ports, whether it's just infrastructure or whether it's ability to expand their capabilities, they need more investments, and I think they've been left behind. And part of this is just a discussion point. In the United States, nobody really knows what the merchant marine is, and I thought this was fascinating. On my second day on the job, I was meeting with the new Director General of the Danish Maritime Authority, and I thought, man, everybody knows what maritime is in Denmark, right? Because of Maersk. It's a global brand. Everybody knows that name, right? And incredibly, he started telling me that one of his biggest issues in this country is workforce development and mariner retention and recruitment. I said, how is that possible? So, well, the young people, they just don't know what the merchant marine is or what the maritime industry does. And this is a major problem. So seriously, thank God for President Trump and his EO, because without that EO, this conversation wouldn't have been sparked. So take it as my responsibility to keep the foot on the gas pedal to make sure that excitement doesn't wane and we keep talking about it, and the rest of the country understands what the value of a strong and robust maritime industry is, and what the merchant marine and what merchant mariners do, how they get their sneakers on their kids' feet, how they get their groceries, grocery stores nice and full, like all of this. But that's something that I take as a severe and solemn responsibility. That's a job of mine here, to make sure the public is aware as much as possible.
That's wonderful. And I think that that's so important that, I mean, of course you do, but that you get it, right? Like that you get it, that you understand, because you've been a part of it and you've shared the similar frustrations of the maritime industry not quite moving as forward as we all have wanted it to. And so I think that you're exactly right with the excitement is palatable. It's everybody's ready to keep moving forward, and I love that you are not afraid to put your foot on the pedal and to move it forward and to be the leader that the maritime industry has been looking for. So that's wonderful. I also like that you've been having an eye toward the innovation side. I've often talked about, there's kind of two different types of shipbuilding. We have the F-150, that's this reliable, general, typical model, the historical version, but then we also have, I think, something new and bold and different, and it looks like you're leaning into that a little bit by really tapping into the innovation side. I've often said it's kind of F-150 versus the Cybertruck. Last month you were at Fed Supernova, which is not your typical maritime conference, but it was a stage full of defense tech startups and entrepreneurs. And so for my listeners who might not know, can you explain a little bit what Fed Supernova was, and then tell us why was it important for MARAD to be there?
Sure. They reached out to me asking me if I would speak on a panel, and the panel's title was called "Ship Happens," and I thought that was kind of quirky. But as I looked more into this event, it was really a gathering of just tons of young startups, and most of them in the tech industry. And I thought, how's this relevant to what I'm trying to do here? And as I was reading through some of the potential attendees and speakers and pitches that they were making, uh, I thought this is exactly it. This is exactly what we were talking about trying to not be confined to the same discussion points and the same people over and over again. So one of the things that I realized was when I went there, um, these innovators, they might not have so much of a maritime background. And some ideas were incredible, some ideas were just wild, and some ideas were probably bad. And of course, I say that, and then that one's the one that's going to turn into $1 billion company, right? But I was thinking, how do we harness this enthusiasm? How do we harness this creativity into our maritime industry? So I was so glad to be there and make this contact with so many of these entrepreneurs. We exchanged ideas of how things could work in the maritime industry, and they started using their ingenuity to immediately on the spot. Some of them were saying, "Well, I think we can do that. I think we can figure this out." Even if it was like uh, barge building. I mean, there was some incredible stuff going on there, and it reminds me like I have two young children, and sometimes when you talk to young children, even though they may not know about a lot of things, they have some of the best imagination possible on Earth. I think that imagination dwindles as we get older, and sometimes I pose problems to my children, and they come up with the wildest ideas, and I thought, I would have never thought of that, you know. And so that's some ways like these young entrepreneurs who are not a part of the maritime industry, because they're not part of the maritime industry, they think so much out of the box. Our minds are more confined to no, that's not how that works because this industry does this. That's an important knowledge and wisdom to have at times, but doesn't always breed the most creativity. And so my theory is we can merge that expertise and industry wisdom with this newfound imaginative and creative environment. We might have something really beautiful here, and that could be the way of the future. So I want to include everyone as much as into this conversation as possible.
That's right. And I think that's so important. When you remove the shoulds and you allow people the opportunity to take risks and to potentially fail, but then also potentially soar, that's the difference, right? The kids don't have those shoulds in their mind. They're just able to think creatively and find solutions. This has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing your perspective and your personal journey with us. It's been a real honor hearing about the successes and the accompanying momentum of the state of Maine christening, the vision for the U.S. shipbuilding, and your focus on people, ships, cargo, and ports. We'll all be watching closely as MARAD continues to push forward, and I know that my listeners appreciated getting to know you a little bit better too today. So thank you very much, Acting Administrator Yee.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren. I appreciate what you do and appreciate all those involved in this conversation. This is a conversation that is not just long overdue, but imperative to our survival. And I take this responsibility extremely seriously because, like I said, without a robust merchant marine one day, without a maritime industry that we can be proud of, we are going to pay horrible consequences. And so sounding the alarm, people sounding the alarm, we have to respond now.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. At the end of last season, I want to remind you, so, when we were talking at the end of season 4, I said that it kind of felt like the maritime momentum was starting to wane. I was a little bit concerned. I was starting to feel a little bit of messaging from the community that maybe, I don't know, look, I think we're back. I think we're back. I was hopeful that maybe it was just a summertime slowdown. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Look, I'm refreshed. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling that we are refreshed in the fall, ready to get back to work. Look, between Sang's excitement and action-oriented approach, he's actually getting out there, going to atypical conferences, going to innovative conferences, not just your traditional maritime. We also recently had the announcement of two new Federal Maritime Commission nominees, Laura DiBella and Robert Harvey, which once they're confirmed by the Senate, that'll bring us back to a full slate of 5 commissioners. Look, we have vessels being built, this state of Maine NSMV vessel rolling out, investment commitments like the day of the christening, a $5 billion pledge from Hanwha Philly Shipyard to expand the shipyard and boost U.S. shipbuilding. This is real movement. This is exciting. Maybe the summertime slowdown wasn't that. It was the summertime buildup. And I think we're going to keep seeing it. I'm excited. I think that we're going to have an active September and October. And look, we also have the Maritime Action Plan deadline on the horizon, November 5th. That's the capstone from the executive order on maritime dominance. It ties the threads together. I'm really excited for a jam-packed fall. And I walked away from this conversation with Acting Administrator Yee hopeful, right? I really was inspired by his perspective, especially his focus on infrastructure, shipbuilding, and the role of the U.S. maritime talent. He's personable, he's pragmatic, and he's thoughtful. Innovation steeped in tradition, keeping new ideas and our rich history both in view. That balance is exactly what's needed in the U.S. maritime right now. It also reminded me why I started the Maritime Professor in the first place. Like I said, to make maritime policy approachable and available to all, not just those who have been in the industry forever. Don't worry, it's for us too. It's for both. Getting good ideas to the table starts with everybody being on the same page. And speaking of approachable, our first just-in-time learning mini course is coming up. A quick compare and contrast of the FMC versus MARAD, something we often talk about here on the podcast, but now in a short focused session, jam-packed with information you can actually use. I'd love to know, what other mini courses would you like to see in this just-in-time learning series? I've already had a few requests come in since announcing it on LinkedIn. Keep them coming. Send me a message or drop me a comment so these short sessions hit exactly what you need to hear. And a quick reminder, we're now taking sponsorships and partnerships. If you or your organization want to connect with this audience, reach out at info@themaritimeprofessor.com. So if you like this episode, be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. Want to go deeper on these topics or bring this kind of insight to your team? Visit themaritimeprofessor.com to explore corporate trainings, tailored briefings, and on-demand webinars, all designed to make complex maritime regulations practical and easy to understand. If your organization needs help navigating the legal or strategic side of ocean shipping, head over to Squall Strategies. That's where I provide consulting services, regulatory guidance, and policy support for clients working directly with the FMC and across the global supply chain. As always, this podcast is for educational purposes only and not legal advice. If you need an attorney, contact an attorney. So until next time, I'm Lauren Beegan, the Maritime Professor, and you've just listened to By Land and By Sea. See you next time.